Yoy!
I'm not going to worry about your level of concern.
Yoy and double yoy!
We talking about
Twitter.
Triple yoy!
Think of how stupid the average person is, and then realize half of them are stupider than that.
Quadruple yoy!
We want them to be fat and sassy and spoiled.
Did the Steelers feel the same way about you?
We love Pittsburgh, PA.
We mock ourselves.
It is time for your Valentine's Day pregame edition of What Yin's Talking About. The conversation about the Steelers' social media conversation. Unfortunately, I do not think Steelers Nation is sending Mike Tomlin any Valentines. The biggest Valentine of all on Boulevard of the Allies, I guess, this week. Right? You know,
God.
We'll talk about this Billboards.
Oh, God. I was hoping we wouldn't, but we have to.
Later in the show, you know? It's like, I know everyone is entitled to their own opinion, so I hear, right? Although I tend to disagree on exactly what an opinion is. You know, saying Palomalu is my favorite Steeler, that's an opinion.
Certainly.
You know? But saying fire Tomlin is at best an uninformed opinion, and at worst something much more deplorable. You know, saying fire Tomlin is about the same vein of opinion as saying, you know, the earth is flat, right? It's like provable to be incorrect. You know, if you truly want the Rooneys to sell the team or to fire Tomlin over a 10-7 playoff record, I guess that's your opinion.
Technically.
I don't know. At this point, the Rooney way is the Tomlin way, is the Steelers way, as far as I'm concerned.
I think that's right. I think they have kind of merged over the years.
I celebrate this. I personally do. You know, I think that there needs to be maybe separate. We need to separate Steelers Nation from Steelers fans.
That's not a bad idea.
One is not necessarily the same as the other. I know we've said before, this is not a podcast for Steelers fans. We're Steelers fancies. There definitely needs to be Steelers Nation needs to be, okay, oh, you're Steelers Nation. Are you a fan or are you a hater?
Or have you spent money for a public eyesore?
Yeah, if you've spent money on a billboard or a Super Bowl ad for your...
I forgot about that.
Yeah, you're not... I think you're different than a fan. I don't know.
That felt exactly like an AV Club skit. That I forgot about.
Yeah,
that
it sounded like it too. We'll get to that.
That's a shame.
Let's get to these takes. We'll start with the coaching trio. The coaching tree's on fire. The coaching tree's on fire. Right, big changes promised in Steeler Nation. Changes. But instead, we'll get the tweet from @David M. Todd. David Todd. All of a sudden, everyone is crowing about Adam Curry and Grady Brown being these great up-and-coming defensive coaches who are now leaving the Steelers. Not once this season did I hear anything positive about either or any coach. I only heard how Steelers had the highest-paid defense and was massively underperforming. So what made these guys such great coaches? I'm kind of in this boat. Everyone wanted changes 2 weeks ago, and now when we get changes on the defensive side, which was, you could argue either side of the ball, but now that we're getting changes, people are saying, no, these weren't the changes, these weren't the droids we were looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I can see wanting to get rid of the defensive backs coach. I mean, obviously, a lot of people have said nice things about the guy in the past, but geez, the defensive backs certainly look bad in the last 5 weeks of the season, but they all kind of did. I mean, I certainly, the defense, I think it's safe to say the defense underperformed from their expectations. I mean, it's a bit of a crutch to say, the highest paid defense when guys are hurt, but they weren't that hurt for much of the season, and the
Yeah.
defense only finished, what, 8th to 10th. So that's either the players or the coaching, but most likely both. So it makes more sense to want, and frankly, the offense wasn't as good in the first place. So to have that kind of increase makes more sense because the offense did get, was a lot better than it was the season before, and they brought in a lot of new offensive coaches. So I can see bringing in more defensive coaches. I'm not sure it was the defensive backs coach that led to Derrick Henry running for, 450 yards over the last 2 games against the Ravens, or Saquon Barkley running for whatever he did in the second half of the Eagles game. But I think this again is, and this gets back to a lot of what Kyle was speaking of earlier. This is a lot of people wanting to have like all the changes of an entire offseason before Valentine's Day, whereas just shifting defensive backs coaches, this is certainly part of it. I mean, Tomlin said, hell yes, there'll be changes, and this is certainly a part of that. I imagine a lot of the changes will be to roster additions and whatnot, but yeah, this is a change. I'm not sure it's the change everyone wanted, but it's one that could lead to better things.
Well, you're like, the secondary didn't give up Derrick Henry yardage, but I mean, can we say Joey Porter Jr.
he did not take a step forward this season.
I mean, if anything, it was a lateral,
Yes.
he covered some big time receivers.
Absolutely.
It seemed like,
but a lot of penalties.
yeah, and not a ton of splash.
And whatever happened with Minka, I mean, for so much of the year on this podcast, we were like, well, people are hating on him, but he must be doing something right. Well, and at the end of the season, Minka was like, I shouldn't be in the Pro Bowl. I didn't have any splash. What was this?
Okay, so Minka is a trending down. Joey Porter is at best a trending sideways. Dante Jackson was a tale of two halves.
Yes.
Beanie Bishop was it was like sprinkled in. He was like a splash of he was like paprika. He
Yes.
was here. Sometimes he was here. Sometimes he was nowhere. Cam Sutton was a bust.
Absolute mistake. I blame that more on Kahn and Tomlin than the defensive backs coach. But
So why are we crying about Grady Brown? I don't have an opinion one way or the other. I would have said if you had kept them around, I would have said okay, fine. And now that we're not, but then I hear the guy that we're bringing in is the up and comer too. Okay,
Right.
well, who's the up and comer then?
I imagine there's multiple up and comers, but no, this guy. Well, I mean, if you want to do that, I mean, I know this guy had been with the Steelers and then went to the Raiders, and people said nice things about the Raiders secondary when this guy was hired. Like, oh, these safeties played better. I'm like, well, you could have said the same thing about Deshaun Elliott. I don't know. I know some people. I think that if you want to do the real criticism of this, I've seen in a bunch of places, people have said they should have kept them both, and then that gets back to the criticism of not having enough coaches. But I'm not
then
sure
where's the
having
change?
more
Who are you
secondary
changes? It's like,
coaches.
we should have kept these two. Then what changes did you want? I mean, do we know what Carl Dunbar's status is currently?
The Steelers are very good about that. This is a place where the steel curtain analogy actually fits. They don't tell you what these guys' statuses are. You don't know. I mean, this only came out because they announced Gerard Alexander. They didn't announce the other guy was gone. So that's just how the Steelers do these coaches in February. It's just like all of a sudden, well, he's not on the site anymore, and we've announced this guy. We don't, and I think that's kind of so you don't know, and that's fine. That's an internal
hope you have your
decision.
RSS alerts on for Steelers.com.
But that's how they tend to announce these things. So we don't actually know it. And it could be the same coaches coaching different things. I don't know. I mean, I do tell myself, and it's so hard to do this as a fan, is that whatever changes, improvements will be made to this team, they cannot and should not all be made by Valentine's Day.
Sorry, sorry, Steeler Nation. No, do I have do I have a
you did
sad
a fine job
trombone?
of making the noise. I don't know if we needed this.
Oh, well, I thought I had one here somewhere. That should have been. That would have been the place for it. All right, enough. More coaching tweets at D_nasty02. Darren Martinelli disliker. The Steelers keeping Pat Meyer is just a symptom of the Rooneys having blind faith in things working, or they are cheap. Probably both. Oh, why is Pat Meyer sticking around? We only had 3 rookies on the offensive line pretty much this year,
Yeah.
or Broderick Jones is a second-year player. I mean,
Right, a second-year player younger than the rookies in many cases. And truthfully, the best case scenario for this team going into the season was 3 rookies. It just happened to be a different rookie, the 4th-round pick versus the 1st-round pick. I mean, Zach Frazier was excellent coming out. I every time I read a criticism of Pat Meyer, it's almost invariably an actual criticism of Broderick Jones. I mean, that's what this really all comes down to. I imagine Pat Meyer's job hinges on Broderick Jones's development. I mean, by next season, he has to be a starting. It's a play, not just a player that starts, but a player that justifies that lofty position. One of the few players in Steelers history, if they've traded up to draft. We believe, because no one tells you that next year is Meyer's last year on his deal. So yeah, I could have seen them moving on from Meyer this year, but they don't like to pay coaches not to coach. So I imagine this season, the offensive line, and particularly Broderick Jones, will determine Pat Meyer's fate.
I like that. I like that plan. Like, hey, as Broderick goes, so do you. And
that's the way it should be. I mean, when you have a player drafted that high, that's not just the Steelers. That's every sport. That's every job. I mean, if you're given a lot of resources in your position and you can't do anything with them, your company will bring in someone that can.
Just ask Grady Brown, the highest paid defense. Okay, well, how about a little con season? It's the preseason. The con preseason continues. At Just 10 Television, Justin Wilson. Is it just me, or is there a feeling of uncertainty from the Steelers front office this offseason? It just feels like no one is on the same page, no direction, and no true goals on where to be for this upcoming season. I mean, we haven't signed a quarterback yet. We haven't drafted anyone yet. What are we waiting for?
Honest to God, we're really dragging our feet here. Before Valentine's Day, I mean, it's first off, if you start the social media post with, "Is it me?" Yes, yes, it is, 100%, definitively.
It's me.
Secondly, it would be whether they go with Russ, or Justin, whichever one they want to bring back. And the owner has said they'd like to bring back one of them. That doesn't mean it's guaranteed, certainly. Neither of them is probably going to sign until at least March. I mean, you'd be crazy to do that ahead of time. Not that you have to test free agency, although it may come to that as well, but to just see what kind of negotiation. There's no advantage for them to sign right now to adjust to make you feel better, the person posting this on Twitter. The front. I mean, look, the team doesn't even share with you until they have new coaches. They're certainly not going to share with you their off-season plans.
Yeah, there's no chalkboard with I'm thinking like when you have the little stickers up or whatever. Post-it notes.
I mean, there's also not a change.gov petition or whatever to be like, let's get the offseason started, Con. Like, it's not how this works.
The first move will probably, I imagine, in the days or in the week before legal tampering, we will hear about a QB deal.
I think that would be literally the very first thing, unless... I don't even know if can you do trades now? I guess you can, but I mean, it's unless they do some kind of trade out of nowhere, because it seems like every time I open a different social media app, that the price for Deebo Samuel has gone down. At first it was a round 3 pick, then they're like, no, well, maybe we'll take a day 3 pick, sure. So I mean, I don't know, maybe they could do that trade early, but even then I'd be surprised. I think Cal's right, and I would even go honestly a little bit. Cal said a week before legal tampering. I'd go a few days. I could even see it getting like real up close to the legal tampering time.
Yeah, I mean,
pick a quarterback.
They made the Mitch and the Russ deal like pretty much day one, didn't they?
Absolutely. Russ was hours before that. I mean, it was like the right on the line of legal tampering. Like as soon as the legal tampering buzzer hit, they were zooming with Russ.
So I bet that's the first.
Yeah.
Unless the only thing I could see, and this is a long shot, I think, is if they need to free up cap space to make a QB signing. So would TJ get the restructure? But I don't see that until camp.
I don't even think they can cut Preston Smith to get that $15 million yet. I don't even know if they can do that. Maybe they can, but I mean that's obviously going to be one of the first moves. A guy that they didn't play for like how many of the last few games? They're not going to give him $15 million.
Let's move on to we'll still. I promise Billboard talk is coming later, but here's a little coach stuff.
I was hoping we'd get out of it.
At Steeler Nation, report surfaces that many of the Steelers' offensive and defensive players don't buy into either philosophy. Dun, dun, dun. Where's the... Insider Ray Fittipaldo in his own, what is this, PPG chat?
Sounds right.
He goes, I think a big part of it is, pardon me, I'm choking on my own insider content. I think a big part of it is that many of the players don't believe or fully buy into their offensive and defensive systems, Fittipaldo wrote. Until that changes, you're not going to see anyone on that team playing with swagger. Wow, I didn't hear about this all season about players not buying into.
It came
into
in. He said this a bit during December, during the fall. It came out a bit then. But almost exact same comments. I mean, Fittipaldo saying it during these chats. I think what's interesting about this is it's the second sentence. It's playing with swagger. You'll notice it's not that, like, we're not going to play or we're not good or we refuse to do this. It's that it's not giving us the confidence. We won't have that swagger to play to the best of our abilities. And in a way that makes sense, because you could see, like, okay, we've gotten our heads kicked in for 4 of the last 5 games, and even that game we did badly on offense. So yeah, it makes sense that we wouldn't play with swagger doing this because we haven't played well whatsoever. But I find it hard I think like you, I really bump against the phrase, they don't buy in to the philosophy. I mean, it can't be all that different than what was going on when they were winning and playing with swagger, too.
I just think, wouldn't we have seen something to the effect of that, maybe on Hard Knock, something just there was just nothing... although there was a moment where Tomlin seemed to be scolding the team, where he was like, this guy didn't buy in and stuff like that, and so maybe it's something even Tomlin himself saw. But I didn't. You think we would have seen something like that?
I guess. I mean, I think what you can interpret it, and this is the most good faith interpretation that's possible, is what you saw of this not buying into it is the losses. I mean, the actual performance, where they're getting crushed in all of these games. But I mean, I could see this being a legit thing with, like, the playoff game, where, okay, after that first drive, the offense went 6 and out, and then the defense gave up a 95-yard drive, and then they're like, okay, this isn't going to work. We're out of this. I mean, that kind of makes sense to me. But they did make that little bit of a rally. But I mean, this feels too analogous to losing the locker room in terms of, like, they played very badly down the stretch. They weren't able to turn it around. And one way to just word that is they weren't buying into the philosophy.
Okay. All right. So, why bring those guys back then? That's, it's like, why is that, will we see who the people who didn't buy into the philosophy are by who gets contracts and not?
I wonder about that because that's what I keep coming back to with the 299 yards. Like, it's, who gave up those 299 yards? Okay, it was TJ, it was Cam, it was Larry Ogunjobi, it was Patrick Wilson, Patrick Queen, Landon Roberts. I feel like only a Landon Roberts contract is up. Larry Ogunjobi, they might cut, so I think all those guys are coming back. So it's so they got to figure something out.
And I kind of want Dante Jackson to come back. I think, I don't know. I kind of like what we got from the first half, and if he wasn't so hurt in the second half, he was tough. I felt like he was tough. He was always getting hurt, but he was, like, toughening it out. So I don't like what changes. I don't know what kind of personnel changes we're going to see.
Yeah, I think I think that thing is okay. It's how can they improve from where they are. I think where a lot of this comes from. So hopefully, like, that's why I was kind of hoping for the flu and for injuries or some kind of explanation for what happened in that playoff game. And maybe this is it. Maybe they stop believing in themselves and the game plan simultaneously after that first drive. I don't know. I don't exactly like to be a mind reader, and this feels very close to mind reading.
Okay, let's move on to quarterback talk. Do I have the song? The song won't play.
It's my quarterback.
All right, that's my quarterback here. We've got the tweet from at PGH Steelers Now. Adam Schefter, Russell Wilson think there's a chance he'll be back with the Steelers. This comes just 2 days after DK said Steelers don't want Russ back. Exclusive, all caps. Mm-hmm. Who am I to believe? National insider Adam Schefter or local legend DK.
Well, it's one of the first people to sign up for DK's site, and apparently one of the few people in Pittsburgh sports media, even tangentially, that never actually worked for DK. I find myself leaning towards him in large part just because of what the owner said. He said, we'd like to bring one of these guys back, and age will be a factor. So I find it leaning towards DK's thing, but I don't believe that the Russ window is entirely closed, in large part because, hey, somebody could throw an insane amount of money at Justin Fields. They really could. And they could do it in the legal tampering time. They could do it during the illegal tampering, hey, send you a text time. I mean, if the Saints want to give him $100 million, there's not a whole lot the Steelers can do about that.
So then why is Russ out there, why is he getting the first dibs at talks, and why is he the one most positive about coming back to Pittsburgh?
Well, I can't imagine Justin wouldn't want to, at least on some level, see what the market is. I don't know what his agents are telling him. I think Russ maybe has a little bit more of a built-in kind of press operation that's going to keep both Russ in the news and hyping, hey, good things are happening with Russ. Russ is talking about that. Remember, you also saw a whole bunch in the last week. The Giants are very interested in Russ. You got that too. I think, I mean, it seems like if you go by the vibes, which is very dangerous, that there's more places saying they're probably going to sign Justin than Russ, but it's not like there's zero places saying that they're going to bring Russ back, just because, again, it'd be foolish to make the decision one way or the other right now for any of the parties involved. So I do think they're leaning Justin more than Russ, but one, I don't know, and two, I certainly don't think the door is closed on Russ.
So you're feeling kind of like Michael Beck 56. Michael Beck. I feel that Russ is either delusional or desperate to save face and get another NFL contract.
Oh, I don't think that's great. No, I don't agree with that. I think if the Steelers do sign Justin or do something else, I don't know, Matt Stafford gets in a time machine and for whatever reason leaves Los Angeles, then I think they could sign Russ. I do think Russ is going to get signed next year. I do think he's going to play for a team. I don't know if it's the Giants, if it's the Saints, or if it's somewhere else. I think, I don't think Russ is delusional or desperate to get another NFL job at all. I do think he will.
No, but do you think he's delusional, saying, "Oh no, I'm working with the Steelers. I'm coming back to Pittsburgh"?
Well, I don't know. See, I think that just kind of Russ's personality. After a year of doing it, I think Russ, until you tell Russ definitively no, Russ thinks it's on. I mean, remember after the Bengals game when he goes up to Cam and says, like, hey, all we got to do is win the next four. And Cam is like, please let me go to the locker room. Like, I think that's just kind of Russ's personality, maybe.
See, I buy everything that is coming. I buy that Russ thinks he's coming back. I buy that he's getting first dibs on talks. They're already doing, 2 weeks of talks or something.
Okay.
I think that he is the better quarterback, even though I don't care either way which one if Tomlin decides Fields or Russ or Aaron Rodgers, fine. But I think that Russ is the better quarterback, and everyone's saying, oh, higher ceiling on Fields. I don't think we saw that in the 4 or 5 games or whatever. I think we saw more. I think Russ is a more accurate passer.
That's 100% true.
I think that it's tough to say, but I think Russ still protects the ball. Even though we saw turnovers this year, I still think Russ protects the ball better than Fields.
He does all the little things better. I mean, it's all those goofy snap issues with Fields totally disappeared when Russ came in. I mean, I do think they have to, they'll have to change a lot of things about this roster to be able to better protect Russ, and they'd have to get Russ out of the mindset of like, hey, you can do anything with your legs anymore. That's all gone. Like, you got to take that out of your game. You're too old and you don't have it anymore. So change that immediately. But they'll have to make some significant adjustments.
When he moved out of the pocket, and I think that's when they had the most success, when he had to go on the run and scramble. I'm not saying become a running quarterback, but when he could escape the pocket, I think that's when he had his most success. He just needed more targets that could get open.
Well, that's 100% true. I mean, maybe I'm forgetting the early games. I keep coming back to what Tomlin said. You're judging on how you finish and not how you start. And so I see a lot more of the finish than I do the start. But I mean,
the finish was the problem, obviously.
Yeah, yeah. I find it weird to find myself leaning Justin since I was the one since I was so please get Russ in there immediately. But I can certainly be I can be moved off of it. And like I said, I kind of wonder more than not if somebody's going to throw a bunch of money at Justin. I don't think that's crazy at all.
Well, I think at Mark Cabali wants that to be Pittsburgh. Cabali, Justin Fields is the Steelers' lottery ticket out of quarterback hell. I think this is correct nomenclature only because I think going with Fields is a lottery ticket. Like,
yes.
Maybe we're going to get the Cordell MVP season, or maybe we're going to get the Cordell 7-9 season
pulled for Tommy season. I read that thread. No, Cabali had some interesting arguments. I don't think what he said is crazy. I think, but this is the Tomlin thing. This is why. What was his line when he put in Russ? That's why they pay me to make these big decisions. Okay, well, you got to make this one. Does Russ have with this team enough left in him to be able to continue winning, or has he atrophied enough? And he is going to be a year older. I mean, eventually, even someone as well conditioned as Russ, and Russ does a fantastic job with his body, will hit a wall, or will he have atrophied to the point where all the very good points you made about how he is a more accomplished quarterback than Justin, to the point where that kind of no longer matters, and he kind of sinks down to that level due to physical attrition. There's so many tough decisions that Tomlin and Kahn have to make this offseason. This is maybe the most difficult one, but it's absolutely probably the first one.
Everything hurts.
Do you think that the decision is made yet? Do you
I
think
don't
they
think
have
so.
it? No?
I think I'd be surprised. I mean, because I feel like if it was made already, wouldn't we have heard a little bit different? I mean, Russ being like, "Yeah, I'm ready to go out there," not like, "Yeah, I'm coming back." I don't know. I mean, I try not to judge internal deliberations by Russell's press pronouncements.
Only thing that throws me off is when Jay Glazer was like, kind of like totally brushed it off, like almost like it was a known.
Oh, he absolutely said Russ should find work elsewhere. And that's Tomlin's boy.
So I'm wondering if just like could he have just said something off the cuff, like, these turnovers, or because what would his criticism of Russ be? He holds on to the ball, or the turnovers. Or,
I mean, it's if Jay really was that dismissive, and that really was coming from Tomlin, then that gets back to maybe some of that stuff we've talked about in prior weeks was true about the friction and not wanting to change things more than he should have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's entirely possible that Tomlin told Jay, "We are moving on." Absolutely,
I'd agree.
That can't be erased.
I'd agree if it wasn't just so much confidence coming out of Russ about coming back. That's why that's why I would agree with all of that, except for that one.
Do not tease me.
Yeah, do not tease me, Russ. Okay. Let's move on to. How about this option, though? We talked about Russ. We talked about Fields, but how about at Blitzberg? What? Ian Rappaport comes in, another insider. Steelers may move on from both Wilson and Fields. Mm-hmm. What percentage would you put to option C?
I mean, probably the same percentage I put on last year that they would have signed Wilson and Fields. Probably that same.
Well, that was zero.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's why it. I'd love Matthew Stafford. Sure, those guys were a drive away from beating the Super Bowl champions in their stadium in the second playoff game with a roster of nobodies.
Right, they're not trading. They're not trading anybody.
The greatest fourth round pick receiver ever. So I don't think that's it. I mean, I wanted to buy the Sean Elliott jersey after his comments about Aaron Rodgers. So I think that would be off. But so I mean, I don't know. I mean, unless this is again the broad shoulders of Tomlin and Kahn, they figure out something amazing. I would be surprised. But again, the owner said we'd like to come back with one of these guys. That there's I know we parse that statement a lot but I mean, there's a reason that's kind of like the first thing they do in the offseason this is from which the rest of it's going to be built. Doesn't mean it doesn't change. And I don't think when, Rooney spoke last year that he thought Wilson and Fields would both be available and would both be available for the price that they were, and that Kenny would ask to move on. But I do think it'd be unlikely at this point, but it could be what's best for the team.
Well,
that when it happens.
Art didn't know this either at the time. At Balls Alerts Sports Updates, just in, the Steelers have the second best odds to acquire legendary QB Aaron Rodgers. What, screw Russ, screw Field. Is Rodgers a better quarterback than Russ or Fields?
I can't imagine. I mean, every criticism you could lay at Russ is so much stronger against Rodgers. It really is. I mean, if you think Russ struggles with his feet, Rodgers is literally immobile. I mean, it's the Jets didn't have the greatest roster, but they weren't as bad as their record. They really weren't. I mean, player to player, position to position. I mean, the offensive line has to get better next season already for Russ or even Justin. It would have to get massively better to be able to protect Rodgers. Now, I'm sure Rodgers' accuracy is still fine. I'm sure that's still good, but I can't imagine at this point with his degraded body, it's that much better than Russ's. Plus, I can't imagine. And also, if there was any behind-the-scenes friction with Russ, I can't imagine that wouldn't be much worse with Rodgers, or at least the potential for it. This would be, I think, the most disappointing outcome. I mean, sure, it could work, but this would be one that seems it would be both initially disappointing and the most likely to be actually disappointing.
That's just dirty rumors.
Just dirty rumors. You'd think I think fans would be more disappointed if Russ resigns, actually. But that's what I'm hoping for. Okay, well, if you had to rank it at Portersburg, my QB tier list: 1, re-sign Fields; 2, trade for Stafford; 3, sign Russ; 4, sign Darnold; 5, sign Rodgers. What is your QB tier list?
I'd love to have Stafford first, but that's impossible. Then re-sign Fields barely above re-sign Russ, but I could be talked into it. And then a lot further down, sign Darnold and Rodgers. I mean, I'd have Darnold and Rodgers in that order, but like very close to the floor. I don't see Darnold as being any better than Russ. I mean, at least, again, sure, I'm sure he has a little bit more physical body left and all that, but I've seen Russ win. I've seen Russ make big throws. I don't know if Darnold's doing that without Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson and a very opportunistic defense that plays in a dome. So, no.
Wouldn't Joe Flacco get you almost the same as what maybe I know this might be sacrilege. It's like a Darnold or a Rodgers.
I don't think that's crazy at all. I think Darnold's a little better than Flacco just because he's a decade younger, if not more. But for the price. I mean, that, whatever the price of it is, I think the Steelers have a lot of money in free agency, and they're going to have to use all of it to improve this roster. But they will have to pay for a quarterback, so that's where some of that money's going to go. But yeah, again, the idea of Flacco as the backup has never, ever bothered me.
I think Rodgers would almost be a backup. I mean, for most teams at this point, unless you're
but you just have to deal with his personality.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the problem.
Well, let's move on to our receivers room at Michael Beck 56. Michael Beck. So the Steelers have already been linked to Aaron Rodgers, Deebo Samuel, and Cooper Kupp. This is going to be a painful offseason. Yeah, because you're one of the problems. Don't you see? You're one of the people who's always speculating on these. Okay, these tweeters. You don't have to speculate and reculate on every little person who or every little draft prospect or every little. All right, at Blitzberg. Sports Illustrated Noah Strackbian says Deebo Samuels and his agent will try to engage with the Steelers on a trade. Are absolutely going to attempt to engage with the Steelers. Absolute engagement.
Attempt at engagement, which I think sounds like we're going to try to attempt to make a phone call.
It sounds like a corporate synergy strategy from Severance or something. Absolutely attempt engagement with our severed innies.
What are you doing? We're attempting engagement. Well, okay.
What do you feel? Debo is going to be a trade.
Yeah, Debo would be a trade.
And they keep saying, okay, before it was like 2 firsts and a third. Now, all of a sudden, it's like it might be a 4th round pick or something.
Or even
so
later, yes.
I'll take that. I mean, I'll take that all day.
Absolutely. I mean, you have to renegotiate with him to get that contract down. But yeah, I think that would be fine. I mean, if they sign Debo Samuel, they're definitely not done at wide receiver, but that would certainly be a beneficial player. And also, I think Debo, because he has that reputation as a guy that's really good at blocking, I think that's part of the reason it's easy to connect him to the Steelers. I think that in and of itself is sort of why this one makes a pretty fair amount of sense for it to happen.
I mean, if it say it was Debo, how much? You say that we're not done at receiver, but you got George Pickens. Debo gets the contract, so maybe the only decision you have with Pickens is whether or not to resign or to let him go.
Right,
then
or trade. No. I mean, he still has a year left on the deal, so it's you trade him now, or you resign him, or you let him play out that contract and hope he doesn't do what Ayuk did or some other wide receiver at Well,
because you'd have Debo, you'd have George, then you'd have Calvin Austin still. You've got the Roman Wilson, right? That's 4 receivers. I mean, we might have one more in the room. Period.
I mean, that's I don't know if that's enough to compete with if that's enough weapons for whatever quarterback they bring in. But I guess it might have to be. Jeez.
No, not enough. You don't think with Debo, Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, and then who knows what comes out of Roman Wilson?
Yeah, I mean that's I suppose is where maybe they would draft another guy at some point just to push some of the others. But yeah, I mean hopefully that's enough. It could be. They've certainly done well with receivers in the past.
Well, let's put it to the ultimate test. At Jason_Shetler, Jason Shetler, which wide receiver would you like to see the Steelers trade for this offseason? 40%, 41% Cooper Kupp, 32% Debo Samuels, 27% Devontae Adams. Who got your vote?
Of those, I think I'd go Samuel just because I don't think he has, and I could be wrong about this, the same injury history that Kupp did. I mean, Kupp had one of the best seasons when they won that Super Bowl, and he was the MVP. I mean, just what an incredible run. But a lot of injuries since then, and that's not Puka on the other side, and it's probably not going to be Stafford throwing to him, and it's not going to be in a dome. And so, yes, all those 3 things I would lead me towards Samuel of those options.
Yeah, I think Kupp would be, talk about, is the room done with Debo Samuel? Well, is the room done with Cooper Kupp? I don't think so because you're going to, now you have to give, I think, George the long-term contract.
Yeah.
And Cooper Kupp is, you still need an outside guy. Is that Calvin Austin? I guess it would be at this point. I don't know.
Wolf.
Okay. Is there time? I guess we'll talk about this billboard. Kevin Adams has been. I've never gone to the terrible tailgate only because.
Nor will I.
When I went to Ben's last game, everyone was complaining about it, how expensive it was, and they were just drinking Natty Ice and stuff like that.
Word.
So, I don't know. If you got the money, I guess that's part of it. If you got the money, you're going to the games in the first place, I guess. So if you can spend $75 on a tailgate. This dude was also, in the past, had some problematic tweets. Who am I to judge someone on something from 10 years ago? But look, I've always said you are the person that you tweet as.
That's right.
So if you're out there using slurs on a public-facing app like Twitter, even if you were,
edgy,
20 years old or something, I'll just let this tweet speak for itself. At Najee Season 2022, Mitch Trubisky fan account. Kevin Adams, the racist, cokehead loser who makes people pay $75 to drink in a parking lot, for sure thinks that putting a Fire Tomlin billboard is the coolest ish ever, pounding his chest at people thinking it's cool. Go fight a cop. Again, what a dork.
I couldn't agree with that more. I'm so glad you highlighted that. I would have said maybe similar things, not quite as kindly.
Just, it's like, I know everyone's doing stuff for the clicks and doing stuff for engagement. We saw that stupid thirst trap Steeler fan Amanda Vance, who was jumbo-sized Tomlin LinkedIn profile to be like, oh, you're fired and stuff like that. Claimed to be a fan. But yeah, getting a billboard on Boulevard of the Allies. I know people are not the Tomlin lover that I am. Mike Tomlin's one of my heroes. But the disrespect. Sure, you might want something different from your Steelers, but the disrespect. The guy's going to be a Hall of Famer. To put a billboard up on Boulevard of the Allies saying like "fire Tomlin" or "trade Tomlin" or all this, just disrespect. It's like it goes to back what I said before. You're something different than a fan. Like, yeah, maybe you're a part of Steelers Nation, but that's certainly not
a lot of shirts. But that doesn't.
Does he own a lot of shirts?
I assume he does. I'm not watching any of that podcast. But your point, everything you said is correct. I didn't mean to throw you off. I was just going to say this wasn't even his idea. He's doing it because the Pirates people did. There were people that said, sell the team, Bob. They bought that billboard.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, like, can you imagine being one of those Pirates fans that paid for this billboard and then seeing the Fire Tomlin billboard? Like, you have been a Pirates fan for decades, and you've seen, 3 or 4 winning seasons? 2 or 3 that went to the playoffs.
Yeah.
And here you are. Well, you're seeing this guy pay and complain about a team that was 10-7. I mean, I'm not quite as bullish on the team as Kyle and all that, but nonsense like this makes me that bullish on the team because I can't stand this. This is so obnoxious. This is so beyond. I mean, why aren't they taking out billboards in Jacksonville? Why aren't they? I mean, this is, oh my word. There has to be a better way to get engagement than this. I don't know. Maybe that's what we should do. We should charge people $75 to drink terrible beer with us and say they're our friends. I can't imagine doing this. I find this pathetic on every single level. And again, I got my criticisms of Tomlin. I don't think this is going all that well, but my God, what a child to put this. I get too angry talking about this. I really do. This makes me so mad. I'm so mad I'm smiling. That's when you know I'm genuinely mad.
Yeah, it kind of goes along with at Bucko Ball blog, Bucko Ball. I understand people are frustrated, but the Steelers have the second best winning percentage in the NFL since 2015 and have made the playoffs in 7 of 10 seasons. Pittsburgh's acting like they're on the same level as the Pirates, right? 4 winning seasons in 20 years. We haven't. Steelers have not had a winning season in 20 years. So, it's just you can go to behindthesteelcurtain.com to read my take on it about how
good. I'm glad you put that there. I imagine that will be warmly received by the choir, but it's something they need to hear.
Billboard buyers and commercial buyers can turn in their towels.
I forgot about the commercial. It took me a minute to realize what even the criticism of the commercial because it was so janky. Like if they hadn't pointed out this is a local commercial and they're criticizing Tomlin, I might not have got it because it was so weirdly delivered. Like it was dudes that had maybe gone to the first improv class trying to film this ad. And look, I filmed a lot of ads for attorneys. That's part of my day job. But man, oh man, that was as bleak as anything. If I hadn't heard that was a Tomlin criticism, I may not have put it together because wow.
Yeah, if you don't know, if you're not from the Pittsburgh area, then at Steeler Nation. Damn, Mike Tomlin took a shot during a Super Bowl commercial. Now, this wasn't a national commercial. This was a local.
Because it was so badly shot.
Yeah, it was a local Romanoff Law Group bought some local ad time during the Super Bowl.
Not one I've ever heard of. I've heard all the
I'm
other
an
ads.
Edgar Snyder and Associates shopper.
Or even the ones that look like they're clones, Shenderovich, and Fishman. I mean, it's again, if you've seen enough attorney ads, you know why attorneys themselves shouldn't be in the ads.
So the Romanoff guys were like, do we need a law to fire a coach that doesn't win in the playoffs? It was just something goofy like that, and it
wasn't that well delivered. Like Kyle really juiced it up and made it sound better than it was.
But to make that your personality of your law firm, we're the anti-Tomlin people, even though they were just being funny about it. It wasn't as serious as the Kevin Adams billboard, but.
It just hit me now. Let's say, God forbid, unfortunately, it happens every day. You're in a car crash. You've suffered an injury. You don't know what to turn to. And you think to yourself, you know what? I want the guys who filmed that bad ad criticizing Mike Tomlin. They don't like Mike Tomlin. That's a law firm I want to go to. Not the guys that have the slick ad, that have a bunch of awards and they lead with all the cases they've won and what they've recovered for their clients. I want the people that think about football like me.
Yeah, like that. Remember that tweet a few months back that was like, "Oh, I asked this to my potential hires." Like, get out of here. Is Tomlin a good coach or something? Whatever.
Or if you did, you're also unemployed right now. Like, you do not have a company, buddy. Like, oh my God, that's terrible. That's terrible.
That's what we've been talking about.
Well, that's what we've been talking about.
I'm so mad.
I'm gonna get a billboard. I can't even afford a bus.
Yeah, we keep trying to figure out
bench.
ways to hang up this terrible towel behind me. I got to
Yeah.
bring some adhesive, folks. I'm sorry. They're
No,
dumb.
compared to the Yinzer Banksy that we had on a couple weeks ago, that's the kind of billboard I support. Shout out to Berg.
Remember when the trolls used to troll fans of the other team versus trolling fans of the same team?
Yeah, dude, our fans are worse than Ravens fans and Browns fans have never responded to my tweets with the stuff that Steelers fans respond with.
Well, I mean, I will say, if you glance through Ravens Twitter after, and we don't have to talk about it, after the playoff game, there was so much fire Harbaugh, which I imagine there is someone in Baltimore right now, or probably somewhere else in Los Angeles, saying Ravens fans saying the same things that we say about Tomlin about Harbaugh. I can absolutely see that.
Well, you won't find me saying
No, not us. But I mean, I'm saying, look, he's won all these things. Don't he has this career. He's been in the playoffs many times, and it's I don't know. Maybe they're still saying he won with Billix players the first time.
Yeah,
Who knows?
well,
But
just remember, Cower is a shoestring tackle away from a losing playoff record. No NFL Today Show, no Hall of Fame, no. He's probably no hairline either. But all right, until next week. Coming up soon. We're coming up at the end of the month. Because it's like we're trying to do unique things. I don't know what we can't.
and that means no mock drafts until after at least legal tampering.
until we sign a quarterback.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's a great rule. Oh, I haven't heard you say that before. I love that.
And so instead, we're going to do unique things, and that includes the return of Steelers March Madness. This year, it's going to be the 64 greatest front office moves, trades, free agent signings. They're going to battle face to face. They're going to face off until we get down to a champion, March Madness style. So we'll do a play-in special at the end of February, and then we'll kick off March with Steelers March Madness. Be on the lookout for that. Trying to do unique things, better than all these other content. I'm not buying a billboard, okay? I got Steelers March Madness. You tell me which is better.
I'm sure that has to be more expensive than you would think. I mean, that's just terrible. It really is. Oh.
Yeah. I know. Maybe we should get a billboard for this show. I've thought about just advertising at golf tournaments, just putting, that's about my budget to get
or even there's got to be some little Google ads out there. I mean, it's because in its own way, I think that penetrates the mind. I mean, a billboard gets you media attention, but like the Google ad is every time you click on a page to be like, oh, the Steelers suck, there's an ad telling you that they don't. Like, there's something appealing about that.
All right, we need a budget, so I just need a job. So hire me. Who wants to hire me? I'll produce your podcast.
Well, you're not going to do something stupid like put something on a billboard. I mean, Kyle makes good decisions, unlike the people. Oh, I get so mad.
Shoot,
about that. Yeah.
should I produce the Barstool podcast or whatever that's called that they do? Yins are crazy. Is that what it's called? I don't know. All right, until next week, keep listening to your coach.
Be their best selves. That's going to be required.
Stay in school.